Amen. Go ahead and have a seat if you will. This morning I have a treat for you, I guess. I want to give you a little bit of a warning. If you have children that want to get a bag, they can get that now. Also, I want to tell you, if you have your children in the auditorium with you this morning, there's going to be some sensitive information that'll be shared. It won't be anything graphic in any way whatsoever, but you might get some questions, and I would encourage you to parent when you get those questions. And then we are available, whether that is myself, Pastor Kyle, Pastor Peavy, Crystal, who's up in the children's ministry. Any of us are prepared in any way we possibly can. I'm going to let the kids move across and get their things real quick, and I'm going to move us into something. I love it. I have a friend of mine who is joining us this morning. She became an instantaneous friend of mine last year at the Hope Dealer Conference. We just finished the first annual something or another Hope Dealer Conference. We don't know what to call it anymore. And I met Miss Christine McDonald last year at the Hope Dealer Conference. She's going to make her way up here in just a minute, but I need you to know something about Miss Christine. Becca, help me out, if you will. Miss Christine is blind. This is what she sees all the time. There is no earthly light in her. She may share part of that story. That's hers to share. When I met Miss Christine last year and I heard her story, I had to go to her and offer her an apology. See, I've tried my best over the years as one of your pastors to be vulnerable and authentic and raw. Sometimes maybe a little too raw. I've got your emails to prove it. And I've shared about the things I've struggled with over the years. And when I heard Miss Christine share her story, and where we'll end today, when I come back up to close us, I offered her an apology. You're going to hear a story this morning that she's going to share with us that it's going to be heavy, okay? The reason I'm trying to prepare you is it's going to be heavy. If this is your first time at our church, or maybe your second or third time, or first time in a while, I'm just letting you know. You're going to hear from Jesus this morning if you want to hear from Jesus. But you're going to hear some information this morning about a world that maybe you're familiar with, maybe you're not familiar with. And I believe God's going to use it. He did in the first service, and oh my goodness, did he. And I believe he's going to do it again. Before Miss Christine comes out, and Wendy Morgan is going to be walking with her and helping her get out here. And she won't move around a whole lot because that happens when you're blind. You fall off of things, so we don't want her to do that. And she can handle my jokes. We share the same personality. And I love her dearly. But I want you to see something. There's a little film that she's been a part of, several films. But there's a little film that she brought that I think it's the best way to set up her testimony. So it's about 9 minutes long. We will turn the lights back on. But I just wanted you to get a moment to not just see darkness, because those of us that are sighted, we're starting to adjust. You're starting to be able to see around just a little bit. You can see the white shirts. You can maybe feel your way around. I've already seen a couple of you get really uncomfortable and pull your phones up so you can get a little light. She doesn't have that option. She's going to share with us her story in a moment. Before she does, I want you to watch this video.
Caught in a curtain back there, y'all. I was like, this is not the time to laugh. That was a lot, wasn't it? That was a lot. So if you need to just kind of take a breathe in and breathe out. I mean, I hear it. I can't see it, but I know what it is. I help write the screenplay for this. And so, I know the message. And so visually taking it in. I haven't had that privilege, but I know what's happening, like I said. So I know it's a lot. I'm Christine. I'm glad to be here. Tony's awesome. I love his church. I've also been here for the first ever third annual Hope Dealers Training Conference, which Jeff needs to shorten that. I don't know, but yeah, it was really great and awesome. I was blessed to become an honorary member. So I have a sister number 30, which was really great because I'm blind. Of course, I'll never be riding a bike, but they accept me into their family and treat me like their own. I met Jeff a number of years ago, like 2017, at a leadership training. He was training the women. I was training the women, he was training the men. And we both addressed the whole group, and ever since then we've stayed connected. And I just really appreciate him. If you're not a part of Broken Chains, don't know what I'm talking about, then, maybe you need to check it out. Tony, I'm sure, can tell you about it. And I'm sure there's some Broken Chains folks out here. Maybe? Any Broken Chains folks? Okay. Yeah. Y'all celebrate recovered people. Y'all know about it too. So I just love Broken Chains. So I'm real glad to be here. I got a little bit of twang. My grandparents are from Mississippi, and I did a lot of moving around. I did grow up mostly in Oklahoma, but my grandparents were from Mississippi, so they had this great accent. And then back and forth to the Carolinas a little bit, and then primarily in southern Oklahoma. So I had this very hodgepodge accent. Anyway, so I get to tell y'all a little bit about my story. And for those of you that's here for the first time, I'm glad you're here. For those of you that come here all the time, I'm glad you're here. It's always lovely to meet new people from God's kingdom family. My family tends to be all over the globe, and I always love meeting new ones. I grew up in Oklahoma, like I said. I never knew who my father was. My mom didn't know who my daddy was. I had 3 older siblings. And they were 9, 7, and 5. They were older than me. So we all, our mother had, my mother had delusional schizophrenia. For those of y'all who don't know what it is where, they not just hear voices, they also see things that they feel are real because it seems so real in their brain, and they act upon what they see. And so it's, back, y'all don't tell nobody, but I'm kind of old. So back when I was young, the things we did with people like that was put them in asylums. And my mom actually was pregnant with me in an asylum and gave birth to me while she was still in an asylum. Right. And so my world started out pretty messy. My older siblings had been in and out of the foster care system many times when I entered the world. When I was 3, I was removed from the home for a very lengthy time with a few broken bones and some cigarette burns and just a lot of abuse and neglect. At that time, my older siblings were placed up for adoption. The state has severed their rights. They had been reunified so many times, they finally decided that they were going to go and place them up for adoption. So then I never saw them again. So I got these siblings, now I'm 3, and now they're gone, and we're all in different places. And then I go back to my mom because I'm the youngest, and that's traditionally how it works in the system. To give her one more chance to do the right thing, try to get help, and blah, blah, blah. I'm not a big proponent of family reunification without, more extensive, therapy and supports. For some reason, 9 months is that magical number, and when they try to reunify. It's just not enough time for some people. But anyway, that's another story. So I go back to my mom, never see my siblings again. And I already got a whole lot of brokenness, right? I already don't know who my daddy is. My mom don't know who my daddy is. My siblings are now gone. You don't ask. I'm 3, right? I'm a kid. I'm a baby. By now I'm about 4. My mom has another episode when I'm 5. I'm going to pause right here. This is the deal, y'all. As I said at this stage of how I came around, I need you to understand I had layers and layers of what we call complex trauma, right? My brain is not developed enough to really be able to have language to talk about things that are happening to me, and yet my brain doesn't have the capacity to really know how to process it. And guess what? It's my mother, right? It's my mom. It's the one familiar, constant thing, right? And so as dysfunctional and messy as the story will continue to be, we just want our family to love us. We're innately designed by a creator who created us out of love. So we are designed to crave love, right? And so here I am, and at 5 years old, we're living in a city, and we were super poor. My mom never really had a job. Grew up on welfare, of course, or with the next man that was giving us a place to sleep because he bought her drinks at a bar. So we lived in cars and hotels, and with whatever guy was sleeping over through that week. So, needless to say, my life was very messy. And so, I don't know if y'all know this, because this is kind of a small town. It may be set up like this here, I don't know. But in the big city, when you got a lot of poverty, there's like a liquor store on every corner. And that's by design, and again, that's for conversation for another day. There's this guy, and he used to panhandle all the time, spare change to buy his booze at the liquor store, and he kind of basically lived in our alley behind our house, and these were all little shack houses, right? And he was always out there, always sleeping. Real nice guy, I guess. He'd always say hello. And we just lived like the next house over from the corner, so he was always out there. And so my mom had an episode. Like I said, she had delusional schizophrenia, so she'd see these things and she would think they were really happening in real time, right? And she thought that I was going to harm her, right, at 5 years old. And so she had forced me in my room. She got me in my room, and she had doused the curtains with gasoline, and she'd set them on fire. And then she closed the door, and she locked it, and she put a chair in front of it so I couldn't get out. And I started screaming. I started yelling. I started screaming. And so this guy, this wild Irish Rose drinker who lived in our alley, he heard my cries. And he risked his life, and he saved mine. He pulled me out of there. Fire department came and all that good stuff. And this is, I like to make sure I always include this story to share his humanity, because all alcoholics and addicts ain't horrible people, because one saved my life when I was 5 years old, right? Sometimes we just make really crummy choices, or sometimes we've had some really messy things happen to us and we haven't had the tools to be able to deal with them, to be able to become healthy people, right? Right? So, anyway, so now my mom's institutionalized again. And I'm back in the system again, bounced around. There was a lot of stuff in the system. Like, I dealt with sexual abuse from the system, people just getting a check, right? And there'd be 5 or 6 of us, right? People just didn't care about us. We were throwaway kids, right? And so now I'm 8 years old and back with my mom, and a lot of stuff's happened, right? And just layer upon layer upon layer, just really messy, ugly things. And I don't want to get too graphic because, of course, I don't want to have to send too many of you to trauma therapy. I understand some of y'all might need people to talk to. We have a whole team ready to talk to you. I understand it's messy and it's hard, and I'm not trying to trigger nobody. But also, if you have a wound that hasn't been healed, you've got a secret that's been keeping you sick, I also want you to create that space that you feel like this is a safe place to talk about it, because this is a place where Jesus heals, right? So just bear with me, y'all. At 8 years old, my mom met this guy, and he had a house, and he had a job, and, this was a real winner for my mama, right? And I'd already been bounced around, like I said, so this guy was a real winner for my mom, And he had a thing for pubescent little girls. That is why he was kind to my mom. And I just need you to know, my mom used to bring men home from the bars, and she'd make me go get in the closet and hide. Sometimes she'd forget I was in there. Next morning, Mom, can I please come out? And it's okay. I didn't need to see what's going on no how. Sometimes those men would beat my mom, so I got to witness a lot of that violence to my own mom. I mean, just a lot of messy stuff, right? So here I am at 8 years old. My mom meets this guy. He's got this house, got this job, I don't remember what he did at the time, but I remember the house was real nice. And he had a thing for pubescent little girls, and that's what I was at 8 years old. And so my mom allowed him to have access to me sexually in exchange for us to have a stable place to live. So human trafficking, right? Human trafficking is by legal definition, something of value exchanged for sex, right? Right? And so my mother trafficked me at 8 years old in exchange for us to have stable housing. And allow this man to have it. I'm going to just tell you, at 8 years old, your brain don't know it did that mess, and I was already a big, hot, fiery mess. And so you don't have language, right? You don't have the capacity. Your brain is not developed enough, really cognitively, right, to label all of these things. And guess what? Again, it's my mom, just wanted her to love me. I just wanted to be loved, right? Cared for, protected, safe, right? Something I didn't experience. So I started cutting. I remember going to therapy about cutting, and this is what they say, you're just obsessed with looking at blood. And I learned later on, like I was lecturing at the New York School of Medicine, later on, many, many years later, and I was sitting on a class right before I spoke, and she talked about, that, the brain stem, once it's activated, which is through like feeling and sensation and pain, once that's activated, all that crazy trauma stuff that's spinning around in your brain, keeping you in this heightened emotional state, can't activate at the same capacity when the brain stem is activated. So my cutting really had to do with disengaging all that emotionalness. Again, that's for another day in another class, because I could talk about that one all day. And it's very practical, but I didn't know that, of course. And they used to tell me just snap a rubber band on your hand, or I was obsessed with looking at the color of blood. But it wasn't. It was like really disengaged all that emotional stuff that I didn't have the language for. 8 years old, I'm a cutter. And it was my secret. I didn't want anybody to know, right? I'd sit down, huddled up in the corner of the closet, and I'd just cut. I didn't want anybody to see me do it. I didn't want anybody to know, but at the same time, I longed for somebody to see and say, are you okay? Right? And that never happened for me. Fast forward a few more years, bounced around, I basically knew my ABCs, I knew my 1, 2, 3s, but I've been to so many schools, and school was so hard for me. Kids made fun of me. Kids picked on me a lot. They used to call me Madam Medusa, say if you look at your tombstone, because I was so ugly, people would stand along the hallways. School was hard. I never had clean clothes. Rarely did they match. Usually my shoes were too big. And I was that kid, right? I didn't have any friends. I didn't know how to connect with the world around me. I was so broken, right? And so at 15, I decided anything I could do on my own. Because, every teenager, how many of y'all got teenagers? Teenagers, we know how the world works. So what I thought was anything that I could do on my own was going to be better than anything the world had dished out to me to this point. Right? I didn't know anything about God. I'd never really heard anything about him. My mom was an avid atheist. Right? And I want to throw this little in. My mom, I'm not trying to make excuses, but my mom was very broken mentally, right, and had been her whole life. So that doesn't justify a lot of the things. I mean, I feel like that's where the state dropped the ball. They should have protected me, but my mom, she just didn't have the capacity, right, and that is of no fault of her own, right. But I became a collateral consequence. Now I'm 15, I'm thinking I can do better on my own. So all I knew is I didn't want to end up back in the system. I've been in the system, I've been tossed around, thrown around. I was just done. And I figured on my own is anything better than anything anybody could do for me, them grown-up folks could do for me. I said, well, if I'm a grown-up, I'm going to get me a job. I look out for myself, and I'm out. Don't have to deal with the system. So I'm in a abandoned house, meet a guy. I'm walking around trying to find me a job, right? I'm going to lie about my name, I'm going to lie about my age. That makes me a grown-up. I can get a job. At that time, because I'm way closer to 60 than 50, so that tells you how old I am. You could work and have a job if you were 13, right? And so, this guy, he like, hey, you need a ride? I said, well, I'm looking for work. And he's like, well, you're in luck. He's like, I got a company. I got a job. He actually had a thrifty nickel. I don't know if y'all have thrifty nickels out here? Y'all know what a thrifty nickel is? I don't know how old y'all are. Anybody know what a thrifty nickel is? It's like this little local newspaper they used to have way back when. You'd always have all the little advertisements. They were free. You could post garage sales or stuff for sale or jobs or rentals. Just go into the gas station or local grocery store. Just pick your up thrifty nickel because it was only a nickel. And so he had an ad in it, and he's like, here, you see this thrifty nickel? You see that ad right there, this circle? That's my job. That's my company. I actually have help wanted in the thrifty nickel. I'm looking for employees. And so what he said, he said, so what's your name? And I said, Stacy, because I made up this name, this facade, right? Because everywhere I went, it seems like, so if there's any Stacys out here, y'all, it is not personal. But everywhere I went, Stacy was always pretty. She always had a great smile. She always had friends. It just seemed like in all these schools, I've been to 21 different schools by the time I was in 7th grade. Everywhere I went, Stacy was always popular. She always had friends. Seemed like she had herself together. I was like, I just want to be a Stacy when I grow up. So Stacy was going to be my new identity. I'm going to be Stacy. And then I said my last name was Carr because the guy picked me up in a car, and I couldn't think nothing better. I was only 15, y'all. And I told him that I was 19 years old. And so here I am, a grown-up, right? And he said, well, I'll tell you what, darling. He says, I'll tell you what. He said, why don't you work for me a few days? I'll pay you cash. So if you don't like it, you got a few extra bucks in your pocket, I'll drop you back off right here where I picked you up. So you won't lose nothing. But if you like it, you got yourself a job. And I got a place for you to stay if you'd like that too. I was like, oh, well, winner, winner, chicken dinner. And so he takes me to his house, and he says, there's a room in there. You can stay there. Now, I'm going to tell you something. In that room, y'all, it was so pretty. His house was gorgeous. And there was a room, and it had all this pretty girly stuff in it, a beautiful bedspread and pretty frilly curtains, and it had all these gorgeous clothes with all these sparkles and high heels and all these perfumes and all this pretty stuff. I ain't never been around much pretty stuff. And it was just, I was like, like sparkly things, y'all. Because, see, I had this hole in my heart. You know, I didn't know how to feel it. I was so broken. And the guy never touched me. He was never inappropriate, never raised voice. He was actually very kind to me. I went into honky tonks and I sold flowers. And I'd come back to the car and I'd give him the cash. I'd go to the next honky tonk, sell some more flowers, and give him some more cash. Then one day, after some time had passed, he says, you know, I got something for you, and I think we should go to lunch. He said, I need to talk to you about something. So I come in, and I opened up this card, and I looked at it, and it had this little ID in it. It had my name, said I was Stacy Carr, said I was 19, which made me a grown-up, y'all. Made me a grown-up. And it had my picture on it. And I didn't know you go to DMV. You know, I didn't know you need a birth certificate to prove who you are to get something. I had no idea. I didn't know. I was so broken. Like, I had no idea, but I'm 15. I know how the world works. And I think, boy, I'm sure pulling the wool over his eyes. He done got me an ID. He thinks I'm really Stacy Carr. So I take the ID, and I'm like, sweet, I'm never going to have to go home again. I'm always going to be able to be safe, right? And I didn't want to leave the job because I didn't have a penny in my pocket, but there was food in the fridge. I had a shower every day, and the guy wasn't touching me, and nobody was hurting me. So I was like, I'm going to ride this till the wheels fall off. So we went to lunch, and he introduced me to his brother, which I'm sure he wasn't. So we go, already? Was that me? Oh, my gosh. So I take this, okay. So I take this, oh, my gosh. So I take this little ID, and he takes me to lunch. And then I start going to these strip clubs. I'm going to these strip clubs, and I'm selling roses to the women on the stages. That's what I'm doing. So I'm going to tell you something. What he's doing is he is normalizing this culture. I'm seeing all these pretty lights and all these girls dressed up real pretty. I don't understand exactly everything that's going on, but I'm selling him cute little trinkets and making money, and I'm giving it to him. And then we go meet this guy again for lunch again. And he says, look, I just want you to know I want you to be taken care of, and I want you to be looked after. And because I care about you, my brother is going to let you stay with him because I'm going to be out of town for a few months. And so I go with him. And there was an exchange of $2,500. So I was sold to this man for $2,500. And I would learn that he owned every single one of those strip clubs I had been going into and selling. So that culture was being normalized. We get to his house, and he has to test the goods. The goods are me. So then I'm broken in with violence and rape. And the next day, I'm given a bunch of stage makeup to cover all the bruises. And I'm given an outfit and said, get dressed. And then I am escorted to my new job, which is being bought and sold in and out of the VIP clubs of Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Coffeyville, Kansas. I spent 2 years doing that until I was introduced to cocaine, and that helped me deal with my trauma. It helped me. I learned when I got high, I didn't have to think about what people had done to me, and I also didn't have to think about what was fixing to happen to me. Right? It became my coping mechanism. At 17, you're not making as much money off of me, and now I'm addicted. I am escorted off the property, and I don't need you to know in those 2 years, I never even tinkled without somebody watching me. I didn't know what my favorite color was. I didn't even get to decide when I ate or if I slept. I didn't know what city I was in. I ended up in, a guy gave me a ride. They told me at gunpoint as they escorted me off the property because I was used up. If we ever see you again, we'll kill you. And I had no reason to disbelieve that. You know why? Because women disappeared every day, and you don't ask questions. When they escorted me off the property, I didn't even know what day it was. I didn't know what year it was, and I didn't even know what city I was in. Started walking. Guy pulled up beside me because, you know, those places are in city neighborhoods. And he said, "Where you headed?" And I said, "I have no idea. I don't even know where I am." Long story short, guy dropped me off in Kansas City, Missouri, in the middle of downtown at a park. It's known for prostitution, pimps, and drug dealers. A very busy community. Now, remember, I haven't even been alone for 2.5 years without somebody monitoring me. I don't know what to do. And I have layers and layers and even more layers of trauma. And I'm also an addict. Guy pulls up and says, "What are you doing here? You don't belong here. You're not safe." He says, "Come on, I'll buy you a burger." I got in the car because I didn't know what to do. He bought me a burger. He says, "You know, I got extra room in my house. You know, why don't you go take a shower, clean up, you know. You can rest a couple days. Like, I don't know if you got somewhere to go or not, but I'll give you a place to stay." So I stayed there for a couple weeks, and then he said, "Hey, it's time for you to go to work." I said, "Yeah, I need to go find a job, and I'm trying to figure things out." And he's like, "Yeah, no, I don't think you understand. You now work for me." And he handed me a piece of paper that had my desk to him. He was a pimp, which is what we call a trafficker today, because language has changed and language matters. And he owned me for the next 17 years of my life. I was his possession. I was bought and sold for the next 17 years on back pages and on street corners and in hotels. And a lot of stuff happened in that. On the corner that I worked primarily, there were 3 churches. There were plenty of opportunities for the people of faith to do something great, to interject what was going on to me. But, you know, it's really funny because people don't like messy stuff. And I guess prostitution's pretty messy. And sometimes those good religious folks, fundamentalists, they get caught up in messy. They don't want to be tainted by it. Oftentimes they'll say if they don't make it inside the door to sit in the pew, God didn't want them there. I don't believe in that. I believe the church starts once you walk out the door. People in the church are already hearing Jesus. They're already learning about Jesus. It's people that ain't in the pews we need to go reach. Right? And so I think we got all messed up. But who am I? So, you know, I had a very distasteful idea of what these church people may or may not be like, because my pimp would beat me in the parking lot. I'd get pushed out of the cars. I'd be bloody and bruised, and they wouldn't offer me a sandwich or even to call 911. Not even a coat in the winter, all those years. 3 churches, 3 different faiths, plenty of opportunity. And trust me, there's a heck of a lot of Sundays in 17 years. Right? And so, fast forward, you know, I finally one day decided I'm going to pray to this God. It's like, if there is a God, whoever you are and whatever you look like, I don't know much about you. Because, see, I had seen a lot of my friends murdered. Because, you know, 59% of these women are going to die at the hand of a buyer of sex, a drug overdose, or suicide before they ever find freedom. 59%. 89% of these individuals were sexually abused as minors. Because that's a vulnerability for traffickers to exploit. Because you're already broken. 68% have been in the foster care system. Another vulnerability for traffickers to exploit. Right? And don't get me wrong, kids that have 2 parents, the parents aren't engaged to keep track of what your kids are doing online today, and that's what that looks like, they're vulnerable too. Because you can be anybody you want to behind a screen. Right? So I decided to pray to this God. My friends died. I figured that was the only out for people like us. See, y'all, I've been arrested 103 times. I've been to prison 7. I spent 17 months in the hole without human interaction. That'll change you. But at least I was safe. Right. So here I'm praying to this God, if the next car picks me up, let it be the one to take my life, because I thought that was the only out for people like us. I could see thousands of people pass me every day and nobody saw me. Not once. Sometimes church people come pray for me, but I'd be hungry. Because, see, my pimp controlled us with violence and food deprivation and sleep deprivation. We call him a gorilla pimp. I'm hungry. Well, we're going to pray right now. A sandwich is you're going to get food today. What is it going to spontaneous combust at my feet? How come you ain't got a... My question to them today is, how come you ain't got a sandwich in your backpack if you're going to pray for a vulnerable population that might need food? Because food is a white flag in these cultures. Right? What? Oh, we're going to pray you get food today. Excuse me. You don't understand. Right? So I finally surrender and pray. God, let the next car take my life in my pain. Let nobody pay for me again. And so this guy picks me up. He pays for my services, and he beats me, and he rapes me, and he beats me, and it goes on for hours. And I'm nodding in and out of consciousness, and he's got a gun, and he puts it to my temple, and he says, give me a reason to let you live. And see, I didn't have one. I wasn't scared of him. I had prayed for death. I wanted my pain to end. I didn't know then what I know now, that people like that prey on fear, and I wasn't scared. So I just closed my eyes and waited. And when I realized he was going to violate me all over again, I was angry. Because, see, I learned early on, if you don't fight back, it won't last as long and it won't hurt as bad. And I learned that from my mother and her beatings. So here I was, angry for every one of my friends that was murdered and nobody cared. Every time a car passed me and didn't help. Every time I went to the ER with broken bones and nobody got me into services. And so I had a chance to get the gun, and I did. And I told him to get on his knees, and I told him to give me a reason to let him live. And he told me about his wife and his kids and his family and his value. I believe God interceded on my behalf and gave me the courage to not take his life, because murdering that man that day would have been the easy way out. I also knew I didn't. I also knew I had in me enough anger and hate and rage to this God that I felt had failed me, that I had the capacity to kill without remorse. And if I would have pulled that trigger, that monster would have been unleashed, and I don't know, it would have ended. I also knew I didn't want to be the same monster I'd experienced all those years. So God gave me the strength to empty the gun in the ground. I threw it, and that was my freedom day, the last day I was paid for. And a lot of things happened on that journey afterwards. Services didn't want to help me. They said I was too messed up. I was illiterate. Nobody wanted to hire me. I was a felon. Couldn't get a job. So clearly I was still sighted, right? So fast forward, here I am in recovery, working a secular 12-step program. Not that they're bad, because that gave me my basic foundation. I didn't know about CR yet. Hadn't quite got Jesus yet, although he was pursuing me. We were working on something. I wasn't in full surrender yet, but I was seeking, right? I was still praying, and I was trying. I meet a guy and call myself falling in love, but I'm too broken to be in love. I'm still really broken. All I can do is stay clean and not use from the trauma, because I'm still going in the bedroom, waking up in the middle of the night, and locking myself in the closet because it's the safest place I thought I could be. So there was a lot. I get a job, I get in, and I'm working. I got a guy, and I get pregnant, and there's some complications. And in my second trimester, I get this really bad headache. I go to the hospital, and they admit me, trying to figure out what's causing the headache. 3 days later, I'm completely blind from the pressure of the inflammation that's happening in my brain. And this is what they tell me. You got medication that'll stop the inflammation in the brain. It's causing pressure on your optic nerves, but it is going to take the life of your unborn child. My son's father said, we can have another baby. And I said, not at my age. Didn't think I'd get pregnant now. But somehow innately I knew I couldn't choose to take a life. Right? And see, I'm gonna share something I didn't share last time. So see, one of the times out on the streets, I had a trick baby. I got pregnant by a trick. Have no idea who it was, but my pimp. If you got pregnant, he worked on the underground market, black market, and he would sell the baby when it was born. So I knew if I had that baby, he would sell her on the black market. And so I gave birth to that baby, and I left her in the hospital. I gave birth to that baby. I left her in the hospital. When she was 3 days old, I abandoned her. I walked out because I knew if my pimp knew where she was or had access to her, he would sell her on the black market. And who knows what would happen then, right? I abandoned that baby. So I had to do right by this one, right? I left her because that was the best choice I could make, and it was the safest thing for her. So here I am, having to choose. My son's dad says I didn't sign up for it. I said, neither did I. My son is born, and I have to have both of my eyes medically removed. So I have 2 prosthetic eyes. But let me tell you about that, because I know I'm well over my time. and I appreciate y'all's grace. So I'll tell you about that. So here I am, newborn baby. Got to have both my eyes medically removed. It's pretty messed up. I'm not going back to my job. Now my son's dad's gone. I'm all alone. I find out I can't get food stamps. I find out I can't get public housing because I'm a drug felon. Just all this minutia. And I got a newborn baby. And of course, I don't know how to be blind. I ain't never been blind. How does that work? I don't know. I got to learn how to be blind. So let me tell you. So the only place they'll rent to me is a slumlord, which is the end of the block for one of those 3 churches that I worked all those years. So I get a house, get a place. Me and my kid, I'm scared because I'm in the same neighborhood where I was bought and sold for so many years. Now I'm blind. Somebody's going to see me even though I'd been away from the hood for a while, been clean for a while. What's going to happen? And a relapse could have been an option, but the idea of getting high blind really outweighed the idea of, getting high. So, just saying. Because I feel like if you're going to relapse, that might have been a justifiable cause. I don't know. It doesn't have to be an option, but I feel like I would have found a way to rationalize it, but I was scared of getting high and being blind. So, but I couldn't look around. I couldn't observe my surroundings, just all this stuff. And I was still very angry. I was still very hardened. I was still very calloused. But I knew I didn't want my kid in the system because I had grown up in the system, and I knew what it dished out to me, right? So I fought, and this church knocked on the door and said, hey, we're here to meet the neighbors. And I was like, oh, okay, we're from down here. So I go to the church, and I eventually give my life to Christ. I get baptized, and I join the ministry. And this is the deal. So I join their outreach. They have this outreach. And I'm like, oh, I want to join the outreach. It's going to be great. So my son and I are going to the little church. He's a little guy. And I asked where the church is. I was like, oh, I know about that church. So I don't want to tell them people I know about that church. I don't want to tell them where I come from because I don't feel safe talking about who I am to them yet. So I don't feel safe with that. But I get baptized, and I would join the ministry outreach, and we're going to go out, and we're going to minister to the Hispanic community in that area that, of course, are Catholic and don't speak English, and I don't speak Spanish. And, of course, I don't know anything about being Catholic. I'm just a new Christian on fire for Jesus once I heard about him. And this is what I learned. Nobody there speaks Spanish. I was like, oh, yay, I don't know how to speak Spanish. Can I take a class for that? I mean, what do we do? They're like, everybody gets quiet. And I was like, hello, did you leave? And they're like, no. I was like, I don't speak Spanish either. I said, so you guys do an outreach to people you don't even speak their language? Like, how does that work? And I was like, I don't know a whole lot about a whole lot of things, but I feel like we have a problem. I said, how about this, y'all? How about we go out and we take out some sandwiches to, the prostitutes and the addicts and the homeless that are, all out here. And they still have no idea about my story, right? And they said, the pastor says, what would we say to those people? And I said, well, you were fixing to go talk to a whole bunch of people. You didn't even speak their language. What were you going to say to them? How about hello? Are you hungry? Would you like a sandwich? Do you know what those people have to do for a sandwich? A prostitute that's out there making a quota for her pimp is going to go turn a trick to make some money. If she gets to keep some of it, she has to think about what she just did to get that money, which is going to give her guilt and shame. She's going to want to get high. Then she's not going to want to eat. So guess what? The cycle continues. Do you know what they have to do for food? So we're going to take them a sandwich. So I started a ministry, and to this day, I still do outreach. I still do ministry. I go out to the trap houses, and I equip communities all across the country to go serve these populations. I'm going to tell real quick. Sorry, I know I'm way past my time. Thank you for the grace again. I'm going to tell one more story. So just recently I was, I was at a place, and I was sleeping. I just come in and got off the train, and it was like on the most prostituted corner in Kansas City. And I think this drives it on home, y'all. Look, I heard sobs. I went outside. I'm like, hello, there's somebody out there. And there was a lady outside, and she was sobbing. And I just took my cane, and I followed her cries. And I said, may I sit here? And she says, you might not want to sit here. I'm a prostitute. And I said, I think it'll be okay. And I sat there. And I said, are you cold? She had shorts on. It was cold outside. I ran upstairs. I got a coat. I got some snacks. I gave them to her. I said, here. I said, what's your name? She says, does it matter? I said, you don't have to tell me. My name's Christine. Car tried to pick her up. I think he tried to pick me up too. I mean, I don't know. It was a lot going on. She wagged him on, and I said, you can go if you have to. She said, no, 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 no. And she was still crying. I said, you don't have to tell me what's going on, but I'm glad you're here. And if you want some help, I can give you my card. And she said, why are you here? And I said, well, there was a time I worked this corner for many, many years, and nobody saw me. And I told Jesus, once I accepted him into my life and I got healthy and I got healed, I never wanted anybody to feel what I felt when I stood on these corners. And I am going to dedicate my life to making sure they're seen. And you're out here, and I heard you cry. And I can't see you because I'm blind, so I heard you. So that's how I see you. So here I am. So a car pulled up, which was her pimp, and a couple of the other girls told her to get in the car, and the word exchange wasn't very friendly. She says, I have to go now. I said, it's okay. So she walked away. She said, were you really a prostitute, or just say that to try to make me feel better? I said, no, I really work this corner. My name's really Christine, but they used to call me Ellie. That was my street name. And I'm very glad I got to meet you today. Stay safe. 3 days later, I was at the coffee shop going in. A guy stopped me and said, hey, you're the lady that was talking to so-and-so that was out here on the corner. And I said, yeah. Where's she at? Do you know where she's at? He's like, well, they found her body 2 blocks up the street. She was murdered. And this is the deal, y'all. Didn't get a chance to take her to Jesus. I didn't get a chance to get her off the street. And I struggled with that. But this is the deal. For that night, for that little bit, she had warm clothes. She had some food. And she knew she was seen. And that's the best I could do. So sometimes my ministry sucks. We don't always get to see the outcome. Sometimes we're just getting to be seed planters. And sometimes the reality is they die. Look, y'all, we can all do something, and we're the body of Christ, and we have a responsibility to do something outside of this church. And I want to tell y'all something. The last thing I want to tell you with is I am totally blind. I don't have eyes. It's pitch black. And I'm going to tell you, I got me some Jesus, and he's amazing. He dusted me up and cleaned me off when humans judged me, labeled me, and thought I was unrehabilitatable. But I'm going to tell y'all, I'm terrified of the dark, even today. I travel all over around a whole bunch of strangers, and I'm always scared because I'm still human. I know our God is not a God of fear, but this is the deal. It's very dark. It's very black. And there's a whole lot of people, and there's just one of me, and I got to count on every one of y'all for me to do what I'm called to do. So every morning when I wake up and I face the darkest dark, I get the privilege of saying, Jesus, walk with me and carry me and keep me strong and keep me safe, because he is my strength. And that keeps me humble, because I cannot do it in my own strength, on my own. I have to do it with Jesus. Look, my story is messy, and my story is hard, and we all have a story. If your story is not painful like mine, it's okay, because your story is meant just for the people God designed it for. Look, but this is the deal. I don't care how messy your past is. I don't care the secrets you keep. Jesus loves you, and he's just waiting for you, right? My heart has been transformed, and I have a passion for people, and I am uniquely gifted and qualified to go out and serve people that people don't see and don't care about. So Jesus loves you, I love you, and I know Pastor Tony said, Christine, could you just shut up? I'd love to meet you. I'm going to be sitting over there. I'm going to be around for a little bit. I thank you for your time, and I thank you for Pastor Tony. I thank you for this church, and God bless all of you.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all for Thank you for recognizing Miss Christine. Will you close your eyes for just a minute? You can stand. You can stay standing. Just close your eyes for a minute. I want to invite you into just a moment. I know we've been a little long. I already let Miss Crystal know upstairs, and they're graciously taking care of your kids. So I would ask you, with everybody's eyes closed, I don't know where you're sitting today. I don't know what kind of pain that you have in your life. I don't know if you identify with where she shared. But I do know this. We all have hurts. We all have things that we deal with. Maybe there's shame in your life. I shared with you before I introduced Miss Christine that I had to apologize to her because for years, pornography was my numbing mechanism. And every time that pornography is clicked on a computer, on a phone, it enters into an algorithm. Doesn't matter if you pay for it or not. It enters into an algorithm, and the money that goes from that goes to sex trafficking. We need to be aware of that. You need to be aware of that. Men, you need to be aware of that. If you have sons and daughters, you need to be aware of that. It is our responsibility as the church to take back ground from the enemy. One of our values here at Living Water is we embrace messy, which means we embrace you. So I want to ask you this morning, and I'm going to close in prayer, and we're going to be done. I want to ask you this morning, if you just say, Tony, I'm struggling. Maybe I'm struggling with what Christine talked about, and we're not going to embarrass anybody. Everybody's got their eyes closed. Maybe you're just struggling in another area, and you just say, hey, before you close today, will you pray for me? Just put your hand up and hold it up. Wow. Same thing as first service, about half the church. Let me pray. Jesus, I love you. Thank you for who you are. I don't know the hurts. I don't know the pains that are represented by hands that are held up. God, I don't fully understand where people are in those areas, but I know you see them. I know that you can see every hand, every hand that didn't want to go up. God, you know the hurts of our hearts. So I pray for healing today. I thank you for Miss Christine and for the vision that she has that can far exceed what eyesight can bring. Pray you bless her, her ministry, her family. And God, thank you for our church. Thank you that we are willing to say we embrace messy. So may we continue to do that and find new ways to do that. I love you, Jesus. It's in your name I pray. Amen.